Charlie Kirk doing his damnedest to still defend Donald Trump in a sea of MAGA backlash has now blamed the debacle and the holistic policy failure of what has happened in Texas and the floods. He has blamed it on black people. He said, this is really about DEI. Texas flooding, yeah, black people in charge. That's why this is happening. Let's go to it.
The Democrats, they're so despicable. The Democrats are not lifting a finger to remember the well over 100 people that have died in Texas Hill Country. What you are not being told by the media anywhere is that the death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI. This Texas tragedy is just the latest example. It's not just incompetence. This is DEI working to undermine meritocratic institutions, and more people likely died than otherwise would have because of DEI.
Put it full mass. Charlie, I met you a few years ago, came up to your studio, debated you. I concluded that the only person who had a job due to the color of their skin was you. Now, Charlie, you used to be a semi-serious human being. You are completely off the reservation. And I know it's about money for you, because I don't think you have integrity one way or the other when it comes to actual politics. I understand you're funded and you have to do what your funder tells you to. But every now and then, even the most gifted of grifters will say something that seems independent. Hell, Candace Owens, Steve Bannon, and others. But not you. You're a company man. You stay on message. Right-wing podcaster Charlie Kirk is shockingly blaming what he calls Austin, Texas DEI fire chief for the deadly flooding that killed 119 people and left 173 missing over the 4th of July holiday, Kerr County, Texas. And if you remember when we first covered Kerr County, we talked about this. Kerr County is on record for asking the administration for additional resources to assist to make sure that they actually have flood warning, to make sure that they have the proper protocols in place for responses. And definitely, basically firing FEMA workers right before it happened did not help with the response, because the agency is the only one that has the full authority to respond to these emergencies. All right. So he then went on to cite a federal lawsuit against the Austin Fire Department. All right. So on Wednesday on this podcast, Charlie Kirk Show, Kirk ranted over Democrats whom he called despicable. He accused them of, quote, not lifting a finger to remember those who died, and said they were responsible for the catastrophe early Friday morning in Central Texas, when the river overran its banks before dawn, rising more than 25 feet in just a couple hours. The raging flood waters overwhelmed unsuspecting holiday campers who had almost no warning before the disaster struck. Once again, warning systems were requested. Dozens of children were among those killed. This is a policy failure. I mean, so DEI as the reason that Charlie Kirk is promoting here is to deflect from the reality that county commissioners, including those who work as first responders, publicly and openly requested to the commission itself, and the commission then made the request to the federal government by way of grant funding that they needed these warning systems and they needed these additional protocols because they were more prone to floods than other areas. Now, I'm sure there's some type of on-the-record reason, maybe population density, et cetera. But none of that matters on a 4th of July holiday when your population density is now equivalent to everybody else, okay? Bottom line is, it's a policy failure. Now, Kirk pointed the finger at diversity, equity, and inclusion policies for the tragedy. Quote, what you are not being told by the media anywhere is that the death toll likely would have not been as high if it wasn't for DEI, Kirk insisted. Quote, this Texas tragedy is just the latest example. It's not just incompetence. This is DEI working to undermine meritocratic institutions. And more people likely died than otherwise would have. Because of DEI, he continued. And then he goes to a federal lawsuit. Now let's unpack the federal lawsuit against the fire department. This is back in 2014. This was during the Obama administration. And this was about racial discrimination. A few years later, the city hired Mr. Joel Baker as the first black fire chief. Kirk claims Baker's top priority, quote, was to make sure the department was blacker, end quote. Quote, when you hire people based on race, you're not hiring based on skills, he continued to rant. Quote, so right now, Baker is facing a vote of no confidence by his union for, this is the key, for denying the pre-deployment of resources to Kerrville, Texas. Kirk claims the fire chief decided not to protect Texans ahead of the deadly flooding. Now, even though the Austin Firefighters Union also has accused Baker of delaying the deployment of specialized search and rescue teams, according to KXAN TV, they have made it very clear that it's not about his skin color. Quote, this is not about race or ethnicity, it's about failed leadership during the recent Kerrville flooding. Our highly trained swift water rescue teams were ready to respond, but were blocked by Fire Chief Joel G. Baker. The Austin Firefighters Association said in a Facebook post Wednesday, which Kirk is referring to. Understand proper context. Talked about this before. When a white male does something quite insane and unapologetically so, the white male is blamed for it. White female, typically the same. Black man, all of black people and black policies, DEI, affirmative action, whatever you want to call it, that is the blame without even checking the background and qualifications of the human being. All black folk and pro-black policies become the actual issue. Why? Because the fire chief was never Charlie Kirk's issue. The issue is the fact that he's racist. And he's utilizing the fire chief as a proxy to his own racism in order to create a narrative of bias that seems comparable to his original agenda, racism. The station, we'll get into that. But the news reports, all right, detailed how the state and local agencies did what? Refused to fund a flood warning system that would have helped avoid a disaster like the one that unfolded last weekend. And Baker has responded, to the accusations posted by Firefighters Union President Bob Nix. Local station KXAN reported that it spoke to Baker on July 7th and he presented a more detailed picture about the request from flood-ravaged Kerr County to help from Austin. The station reported the chief said that on July 4th, he fielded a request for an assistant fire chief, a dispatcher, and 3 swimmers. And the assistant chief chose not to deploy. The dispatcher request was not granted, but 3 swimmers were deployed. Quote, it's important that we are able to function and maintain a certain level of readiness in the city of Austin, Baker told KXAN. Quote, now, to keep in mind, again, I was not sure how much of the water would impact my city, the city of Austin. I need to make sure that I have an adequate amount of resources within the city so I can respond for my mutual aid calls and my automatic aid calls around the city of Austin. KXAN reported the issue of reimbursement is related to a memo the city has sent in June urging firefighters not to self-deploy on such occasions. As the city faced a budget crunch and uncertainty about whether such expenses incurred could be recouped before the end of the fiscal year. Once again, you have a policy failure and a budgetary policy failure that contributed to the decision of the fire chief. And once again, not all black people obviously are involved in the prerequisite to that decision. Charlie Kirk left that part out. CNN is reporting that Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, under the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, and Acting Director David Richardson, was also slow to respond. The deadly flooding happened early Friday, and by Monday, only 86 FEMA staffers had been deployed. They needed way more. A function of the number usually deployed for a tragedy to this scale, it was woefully under that. By that Tuesday, just over 300 were in Texas. Trump officials, in the meantime, have doubled down on their vows to shrink FEMA and shift more responsibility to disaster management to individuals. Even as advocates for the agency pointed to the Texas flooding as a timely example of why vast federal resources are necessary. Let me tell you why they're doing this. Trump don't know how to fix anything. He doesn't know how to fix anything. So we can all agree reform is required in these agencies. He doesn't know how to fix anything. So he calls another guy named Musk. He don't know how to fix anything either, okay? So he's okay, well, let's just shrink everything. Let's make everything small. And then we'll tell other people to fix it. Because these agencies are no longer able to fix it. They don't have enough people. That's how we'll fix it. Meanwhile, Patriot Front down in Texas is offering relief to white people only. Here it is.
Patriot Front is here in central Texas, responding to the flooding, which has destroyed communities and taken the lives of scores of Americans. Our activists are clearing roads, removing debris from homes and public spaces, and distributing supplies to residents. There's lots of volunteers across the region, but something sets us apart. We are prioritizing the interest of our people in this mission. While every other race and religion across the country and the world, for that matter, can establish charities, communities, and institutions that explicitly exist by and for their own, it is regrettably a revolutionary act to do so for Americans, that unique nation, descendant of the European peoples who discovered, settled, and founded America.
I still don't understand how you find something that somebody already got it. You know what I mean? Like, how did you discover it when somebody else already got it? Okay. This is, sir, good for you. I appreciate you. You're helping of humanity. Unlike you, even though you're racist as hell, I don't see white people as non-American. I don't see them as not my brothers and sisters. So I'm glad you're helping somebody. As far as your personal pedigree is concerned, you are racist. You are puny. You are petty. Facts. Now, if a group said exactly the same thing he said, but contextualized it in terms of black, well, MAGA would be all over that because we live in a post-racial society, according to them. Okay. All right. Yasmin, thoughts here.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about, right? Charlie Kirk gets to call Democrats despicable. The right wing gets to harp on the left for supposedly politicizing a tragedy just by asking for investigations into what went wrong, which is a totally normal thing to expect to happen so that a similar disaster can be prevented in the future. But then this is what they put out, right? First of all, Kerrville is also not in Austin. Like, I know that they're close, but they're not the same town. Secondly, Texans on both sides of the aisle are very upset about what happened in Kerrville, right? That was kind of a known floodplain. That's a very popular tourist destination, not just for people outside of Texas, but also for Texans, especially during the summer. It is very sad what happened. Nobody is happy about what happened. People want answers, and maybe we're looking for it in different places. But I don't understand how he's trying to make something like just like being sad about this disaster a partisan point. Third, as you pointed out, I just want to drive the point home that FEMA could not act because of Kristi Noem's new regulation that she imposed on the entire department. She didn't approve FEMA action until 72 hours after the flooding occurred, and every minute counts in a tragedy like this. I believe the river rose 20 feet in under an hour, right? And FEMA was actually posed and ready to send aid and send workers and volunteers to that area and send kind of just anything to help. And they were not able to do so. They were only allowed to deploy a few people at the start. And then like a day later, they got some more, but it was still just a fraction of what they normally would have done given the circumstances. The Kerr County officials, as you also pointed out, they did call for better flood protections. Kerr County is a red district. They asked the red state government for better flood protections. They did not get it. So this DEI point, it's so dumb that I almost don't want to address it. It's just so stupid. The idea that Black people or any minority person can't do a job as well or better than a white person is stupid, but racists are not intelligent people. We know that. Also, to assume that this particular official got the job just because he was black is not only ridiculous, but Charlie Kirk has no idea if that's true or not. He just does not know. He wasn't there when the guy was getting hired. But to his racist audience, they will never ask him to defend that point. They'll never ask him how he knows that this official was or was not a DEI hire. They'll never ask him to explain the circumstances around this official's hiring. And if they did ask him, he wouldn't be able to answer. Either way, even if Charlie Kirk could make a case that this black man does not deserve the job that he has, it's still racist because a white person would never be asked to vehemently defend their fitness for their job or position to a YouTube influencer. So also to your point, Doc, about Trump fixing things or his inability to fix things, I should say, it just reminds me of him telling California to just rake the forest to prevent forest fires. That'll fix everything. But this is just something that Republicans love to do. Yeah. They discredit federal programs to dismantle and then privatize them. But the first step in that process is to convince the public that these programs are defunct in the first place. And in order to do that, they have to kneecap them so that they literally can't do the thing that they're able to do, the thing that they were created to do, the thing that they were trying to do, were it not for Kristi Noem.
Yep, there you go. So narrative, once again, take precedent over actual policy and people. We'll bring updates as they come.